Hey everybody, this is how to choose tech stacks, or more specifically, I'd say how I choose tech stacks, right? So let me just add that there. How I choose tech stacks. So this is a very difficult question for a lot of beginners, and especially when you start a new stack or when you start working with a new domain in computer science. For example, let's say you're a backend developer and you're starting to work with some front end, or you want to learn some front end, right? And it so happens you kind of ponder a lot of time, or you spend a lot of time thinking, which stack do I choose, like where do I start with, how do I progress and stuff, right? And this is again a very personal question. Like actually spend a lot of time, and I kind of have a framework now on choosing a tech stack. So this is essentially what I do. The first thing I do is, so I want you to open a notepad, right? Maybe a pen and paper is fine, like what works for you. What I do is I open up a notepad and create a list. I've got three lists, right? And with these three lists, I kind of shortlist what I want to start with, right? What I'm going to do today is show you an example of how I chose my cloud environment and why I use the cloud environment, right? Or specifically I use GCP or Google Cloud Platform, and how I came to the conclusion of using Google Cloud Platform. So the first thing you want to do is create a list of industry standards. So create a list of industry standards. So the question here, what we'll be doing is choosing a cloud provider. Using a cloud provider. So maybe you're a backend developer, you want to learn some DevOps and you want to learn some cloud. You're thinking, which should I learn? Like there's a lot of cloud providers today. Where do I start with? Right. So the first thing you want to do is Google, or maybe today, like it's extremely easy to just prompt a LLM model. Like maybe you could go to ChatGPT and say like, hey, find me or create a list of industry standard cloud providers. And so let's say the result that we got is, AWS, we got GCP, got Azure, and then a couple of them. Let me just, oops. Okay, three. We got Azure, we got, let's say, four DigitalOcean. Let's say we've got, what else do we have? So we've got Linode. Let's say we've got, let's just put Python anywhere in there, right? I think it's one system I used in the early days when I was kind of learning to deploy and stuff. Let's say we've got this six, right? Again, this doesn't have to be a list, but just Google, make a list of industry standard, what's the most used and stuff, right? Now, the second list is the one you want, like the second list you want to create is the one which you kind of want to, like, what's your priorities, right? So let's say my priorities are, I want the cheapest one, right? So I'm going to say list priorities. So I'm going to say cheapest. Let's say your company does not provide you, or you're paying for yourself. Okay, what's the cheapest option I can get, right? The second, there are a couple of items in this list. So the second one would be, what's my end product, right? So define your end product. Is it a data engineering applications, or is it a data engineering applications, or maybe big data, or etc., etc. I just say that, right? And so the next you want to look is, how good is the documentation. You want to documentation, right? Now you have to list these things, right? And again, this varies depending on your priority. So for me, let's say I want the cheapest model because let's say I'm paying for myself. I do not want to pay a lot of money, while I'm learning, right? And let's say I'm building some data product and I want to do maybe some I'm serving my data through web platform, so I need easy integration with my, like, I want to deploy my, let's say, React application very easily. Okay, so I would think, okay, there may be AWS Amplify. Okay, so that's the way you think, right? Now the third list is kind of tricky, right? This is where you have to actually do some work, right? So the third list, create personal a personal opinion, or let's say or personal feel for each one, right? So what do you do is, let's say if you're let's say our question here is cloud, right? So what I want you to do is go ahead and create an account on AWS. So say, let's just say create an account. Try using the CLI tool, right? Try navigating through the, what do you call it? This, not the CLI, the GUI tool, like the GUI platform that the cloud provider provides, right? And so try and get the feel of it. And this is where you kind of find the perfect one, not the perfect one, the perfect one for you to start, right? So I actually chose GCP, right? So I chose GCP and just that there. Why? I just did this, right? So I listed these. Okay, there you go, GCPs here. And I kind of needed that. Actually, AWS, I think AWS is cheaper for the first year. But when I came to the, the third list, right, when I reached here, I kind of found out that I tried the AWS CLI, I tried the GCP CLI, which is G Cloud, and what I felt was G Cloud just felt intuitive for me, right? The way I work, the way I want to use a command line. GCP just felt very native for me, right? And okay, so let me just see integration with. So one question I had was integration with Kubernetes, right? This is one question I had in mind, and so kubectl and gcloud kind of integrates like very easily, like it is a very smooth integration. I'm like, okay, now I tried the AWS CLI, not very, not very intuitive for me, right? If you look at the AWS, like I worked with AWS bad jobs, and the AWS logs is something I played around with. I did not actually like it, right? So this is how I choose, right? And the reason is, now you actually have a very logical model of how you ended up here. And and if you feel like, now do I need to go back and switch, right? Now this is a very common problem with a lot of beginners. You choose one, let's say you're learning React, and I'm like, hey, React isn't a lot of fun, let me just go ahead and look at Angular, right? You do not want to do that. If you're learning programming, you want to stick with one, right? And you want to get the feel of it for at least maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks before you kind of feel like, okay, I do not want to use this, right? And when you choose a framework, you do not want the first one to be extremely difficult to, right? Let's say you're starting to build a REST APIs, you do not want to choose C or C++. Like you just it's so much better to start with Python, or maybe, C sharp or Java. I don't know. I worked with Python a lot. Like I think Python and Node would be a much better choice if you're starting to build REST APIs. And then if you then once you've mastered those, you want to maybe, go with Go, or use C++, right? This is my way of doing it. Thank you for watching.